Good morning. Welcome to the latest installment of Bright Ideas. I've quit trying to say the number because I think I forget. This is probably number 7, but I'm not positive. Today I'm joined by Don Taylor from AIA Kansas City. Hi, Don.
Hey there, lucky number 7. Great to be here.
Can you start by letting us know what you and AIA Kansas City do?
You bet. I am Executive Director of American Institute of Architects Kansas City chapter. We are the local chapter of the National Professional Organization for Architects, and our chapter in KC is the 17th largest in the world. We're kind of proud of that. We have a large number of architects in our market, and we do a lot of just a whole array of programming that they need to enhance their career, enhance their firms, be involved in our communities, local level, state level, national level. So we do that. There's a staff of 4 of us full time, and we have our office in the Crossroads Arts District of Kansas City.
Yes, and that's actually something I know well. Before we started recording, you and I were reminiscing a little bit, but for everyone else that wasn't part of that. So when Firefly started, I was in St. Joseph, but very quickly, so I started Firefly in April, and I think by October of that year, I had moved to Kansas City. The first client Firefly had in Kansas City was AIA Kansas City. And even more funny was once you guys moved to your new office, that was our first office space in Kansas City. So that was right around the same time you kind of started. I think that we cohabited that office there for a year or two until we got to the point where I needed another desk and then another desk. And then
Right.
I know you guys used to joke about how many packages I would receive.
Right. Well, I feel like we were lucky. We saw the birth of, your rocket ship just taking off. So, right. I joined in June 2010, and I think you were already there. I was like, who's this guy? Because it's all women on my staff. And, but yeah, that was really fun. Those were, it seems like the blink of an eye, doesn't it?
Yes, it does. That's pretty crazy. And the other thing, for those of you that don't know, for Firefly, that's kind of been a unique partnership to help us with that rocket ship journey she referenced. It's not close to half or anything, but we do have a lot of architecture work that Firefly does.
Yeah.
And it's been nice being associated with AIA for such a long time, because it when you have those initial conversations, it kind of gives you a level of credibility and common ground. When we tell them we work with AIA Kansas City, then they instantly know, okay, well, we know them because every architecture firm does.
Right.
And then it kind of starts the spider web of, well, who else do you work with in the architecture field? So that's been nice.
Doors fly open, and yeah.
Exactly. So I guess for you guys, what have the last 6 or so months been like? How are things going?
Well, it's a roller coaster. Everyone's going to have stories. There are going to be PhD dissertations written on this for years to come, of course. I keep referencing that, the intellectual part of this, which I know isn't probably what you were expecting me to start with, but the intellectual part of dealing with the pandemic, the racial inequity issue, all the other things that are going on, the economic downturn that's kind of in our midst or hovering over us, has been stimulating in a weird way, the intellectual part of tackling this as problems to solve. But man, I need a break from all the problem solving. Yeah. I'm ready for a break. The first few months, I think March through May was, it was crisis management. It was cancel everything. What can we do? Hunker down. And then it really became just kind of, do the work in a new way. And I'm sure we're probably going to get to kind of how we've transformed a little bit in what we do. The other thing I think has been, this is national, even in an international pandemic, and then it's a very much you can bring it down to the local level in terms of the economic effects, et cetera, the layering on effects. So it's been interesting for me to see kind of how Kansas City is addressing it and the different ways that, either architects as architects or architects as just individuals are getting involved, whether that's in a service type capacity, an advisory capacity, various task forces, civic, chamber of commerce, et cetera, that have started up. So I think maybe the common thread in all this of the last 5 to 6 months has been, how does AIA Kansas City and how do our architects continue to, maintain a level of excellence, a level of service, a level of community involvement.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I definitely can see that. And so much of your guys' work is hinged around the live events. That's the,
Yes.
you kind of built out the space you occupy today for those. So,
Yeah, right.
um,
Good point.
yeah,
Good point.
that's that's got to be interesting. I agree with you though on the thinking outside of the box portion. That's kind of one of the roles I've enjoyed most as a technology provider with our clients. In some cases, obviously, we're forced to say there isn't a solution for this. But one of the stories I've shared a couple times on here that I think you'll find interesting was um, my wife's company needed a solution to be able to tour warehouses and remote sites across the West Coast
Interesting.
for food safety reasons. And
Hmm.
so we worked with them to find a robot that they can control. It's kind of like a Segway with a camera on it. And
Wow.
we can sit here in San Diego and control it in, Seattle or whatever. But they
Wow.
can do a full warehouse walkthrough with the only requirement being Wi-Fi. Something they would have probably never looked at before,
Yeah.
because you fly for those types of things and you take care of it. But
Yeah.
I think in their case specifically, whether or not travel restrictions kind of lift, or travel recommendations, I guess there really aren't restrictions, but whether or
Yeah.
not that lifts, I think they're gonna carry on with this using technology as a tool, which, as you can imagine, has been kind of good for Firefly in a lot of ways. Among the member firms that are part of your organization, I guess, kind of broadly speaking, what are they telling you, or how are things looking for them?
Yeah, good point. I mean, what you just described for your wife's company, I think there are about 10 different parallels with what I hear from our firm. So we have 70, I think we're at 73 member firms this year. We have the majority of firms in our territory, which is Johnson and Wyandotte counties in Kansas, and then about 16 counties in Missouri. So, architects, many architects travel a lot.
Mm-hmm.
There are only so many projects you can do in Kansas City or in our metro. And we have the three largest sports architecture firms in the world are based here. So London Olympic Stadium was designed in Kansas City. Most NBA arenas are designed in Kansas City. Atlanta NFL stadium designed in Kansas City. So, our folks are on the road a lot, whether that's for sports or for anything else, higher ed, hospitals, labs, um, commercial buildings, et cetera. So, the shutdown of travel or the extreme reduction of travel, especially air travel, has definitely forced a lot of quick maneuvering. And using technology, as you say, is this the obvious solution. So I'm hearing from my firms that they are definitely employing everything from either, I don't know about robots, maybe they've got some. I'd love to meet some of those. Some drone fly-throughs. I think drones are being used a little more. I've seen some local Kansas City-based drone photographers really kind of try to step into that space. And then just really interviews for project interviews to get the contract or get the bid or whatever. We surveyed our members back in late May about some of these types of modifications or adjustments they've been making. So a lot of them are reporting they are having to or choosing to do remote interviews, kind of like this, rather than travel to the site. That might be the firm's preference. It may be the client's preference.
Mm-hmm.
So I think, when you're looking at both sides of the equation, whether you're the service provider or the client, you've got to be ready to adjust. And I think everyone's going to have to continue to be creative and how they approach that. I think when you start looking at the financial or economic savings of not traveling. I mean, just myself, I'm not an architect, but I run a chapter, an AIA chapter, and I had 4 trips I was supposed to take this year for conferences, for speaking engagements, what have you, and all of those canceled. Well, that looks really pretty on my financials right now because I'm saving a whole lot of money.
Mm-hmm.
But that may not last forever. But I think that maybe substituting other methods, maybe we're going to invest in more um, remote technologies, video conferencing, video production, which is something we had never gotten into. Maybe we
Mm-hmm.
can talk about that later. But yeah, so if you're focusing on our firms, that's what I'm hearing is that they are definitely needing to come up with things like this. But now that it's September 1, give or take, I am hearing more, oh, I'll be out of town tomorrow or
Mm-hmm.
whatever. So
Yeah,
very
I
true.
know. I think it's funny here in California. Anything that could be viably considered a road trip is hard to book right now. We
Yeah.
were looking at some options for October, and Like there's some really cool, they call it glamping, but some of the
Uh-huh.
hotels up in the Big Sur area have some really nice like tents
Oh
that you can
yeah.
rent.
Oh yeah.
All that stuff's booked.
Yeah, I bet.
Because
Oh, I
if
bet.
you can drive to it, people are like, let's do it.
Yep.
Um, yeah, I think from our end too, from my end specifically, not necessarily our end, I think the thing that's been interesting is no one ever really cared that I'd moved to San Diego. I don't think I ever got anything that I would even call pushback. I think that most people knew me well enough, and they, by the time that I kind of made it more public that it had happened, they had already had the experience that it didn't change things.
Right.
So that worked out, kind of, it worked itself out. But this has kind of given me both the excuse and the kind of kick in the butt to re-engage a little bit more personally with people,
Yes.
which I think is kind of a net positive for both us and our clients, because it becomes easy to just kind of sit down and focus on the work that has to be done, and
Mhm.
less on the relationship.
Right.
So it is nice now when you ask somebody to do a Zoom call. It's not really difficult to get scheduled at all. They're doing them all day anyway. So
Right. Right. The
that's kind of been a
adoption
nice way to
rate,
re-engage. Yeah.
right. That adoption rate of like, Zoom or GoTo, whatever the platform is,
Hmm.
was pretty immediate. I mean,
Yeah.
grandparents are getting on Zoom and not my parents quite yet, but, from middle school students to everything in between. It's just become like picking up a phone. It's you have Zoom or you have some kind of video platform. That personal connection piece I think is so critical, Adam,
Hmm.
in what we're dealing with. Especially in my world, I'm an association management person, so that almost by definition involves professionals coming together.
Hmm.
In various ways, networking, mentoring, advising, governing, all those different types of functions. And I actually just been listening to several either podcasts or recorded conference presentations about this aspect of what we've been going through, and how challenging it is for folks who, when they can't get together. And, Zoom is great and online platforms are great, video platforms, but, it can't substitute and really shouldn't substitute. So what can we do? What can my association do, my group do, locally, nationally, whatever? What can other groups do that need and kind of live by, succeed by personal interaction? It's tricky.
Hmm.
We've had we're planning a group of 10 people that can meet in a parking lot under a tent and get bagels
Hmm.
together, whatever, and that's fine.
Hmm.
um, if this were to go on for years and years, I think it would fundamentally change who we are. I'm hoping this is
Yeah,
what we're.
it seems like the short term. Obviously, there's so much question about a vaccine, but I know the NBA Players Association funded that effectively instantaneous test, where you could almost literally offer it to people as they walk through the door, and they have the results within seconds.
Wow.
That feels like that's going to get us, if assuming they can scale.
Scale. Hmm.
It seems like that's going to get us to the point where you could conduct a meeting. Obviously,
Yeah.
you're going to probably still have to weigh out, is it worth it? But hopefully
Right.
that will get us to some sort of normalcy in the next, 6 months. But
Right.
yeah, it's I don't know. Everybody I talk to, we just kind of agree that at first my focus, and I think everybody's focus, was, okay, well, what are we going to do now? What's 1 month, 3 months, 6 months look like in this situation?
Right.
I think enough has happened and or not happened at this point that everyone I talked to so far, all 7 of you, we just end up agreeing that it's like heads down, focused on like what's right in front of your bumper, because
Exactly.
anything else is just impossible.
That's exactly right. I mean, we're going from months of advanced planning, weeks at a time. What's going to happen in 2 weeks? What's going to happen in 4 weeks? Beyond that, like we have a big event every December, and I literally cannot get my brain to focus on it. I cannot, because I feel like anything I would plan today in early September is going to be irrelevant. I mean, when I look back at my old emails from March and April, some of the things that we were writing or expecting or prognosticating about, I mean, it's ludicrous to think that we were going to have things going on as normal in June, July, August. It just didn't happen. So, yeah, I agree with you. Yeah,
Yeah.
right in front of us, little tiny intervals at a time, not 6 month, 12 month, 18 months.
Yeah. Cool. Well, that's probably about all the time we have for today, but I appreciate your time.
Thanks.
And it was nice to catch up.
Great to catch up. Thanks for making me part of this.
Absolutely. Thank you
Look
for
forward to
participating.
seeing more of the sessions, and have a great rest of your week.
You too. Thanks so
Take
much.
care. Bye.